If you're into solar punk and off-grid living, you have to see living energy farms. Y'all, I have visited 30 communities, land projects, solar punk projects, off-grid projects in the last 18 months. And by far, this is the most impressive off-grid system. And they basically do that by reimagining how people live. And in today's episode, we're going to be interviewing Alexis Ziegler, who is the founder of Living Energy Farms. But before we jump into this episode, I'm going to show you a quick 60-second tour of their commune and their project, and we're going to jump into some mind-melding shit. So stick along.
What does it look like to actually live off grid? Well, welcome to Living Energy Farms in Louisa, Virginia. Not only do they turn all their poo and compost into heating and cooking fuel, but they've reimagined every appliance from the stove to the fridge and from the windows to the wall. Sorry, but they do that to consume 90% less energy than the average American household, which makes the solar and DC battery grid way cheaper. Their ethos is to design systems for 90% of humanity, not just the upper global 10%. And don't even get me started about their food forest, y'all. If you want the blueprint for all this, follow and comment grid, and stay tuned for more case studies on alternative ways of living that just make sense.
Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you being here. It's really cool to be visiting Living Energy Farms today. I've heard a lot of people talk about it, and to actually see it is really cool. Not only have you kind of built like a bit of a food forest here, you're actually living off the grid. And I think a lot of people talk about living off the grid, but like A, very few people actually do it. And then B, if they do it, it's like very expensive systems, or it's people who have like, master's degrees in the topics. But I feel like you've kind of found a formula that's pretty scalable. And it's actually cool to see it in action. And I think you were saying this, but it's like a lot of people don't believe it's possible, but when you actually see it, you're like, whoa.
I'm happy for what we've been able to accomplish. I helped a lot of my friends in years past build off-grid systems, and I've done quite a bit of work organizing around regional environmental issues and political issues in the past. So for me, it all comes together in the sense that it's not that politics are unimportant. Certainly, if we could elect better leaders, that would be great. But if in the bigger picture, the ecological foundation sets the stage for what's possible economically, and that is really what sort of drives the evolution of human culture over time. Or to say that in a much simpler way, in a way that's relevant to what we have now, you cannot have a democracy built on an economy that's owned by a few people. And that's really no more than common sense. And yet we're kind of trapped, or we feel trapped, in that we don't know how to take care of ourselves without these big corporations who provide our energy and our food and everything we need. We complain about them. So I'm a very deep believer in self-determination. And unfortunately, there's a big overlap with environmentalism, with an environmental perspective, but unfortunately the mainstream environmental groups have largely taken a shortcut and gone towards what I would call palliative measures, making people feel better. So, instead of talking about consumption, instead of talking about lifestyle, instead of talking about it in a broader, more holistic way, they want to talk about windmills and solar panels and government subsidies for windmills and solar panels. That's really unfortunate. Like so much of the focus now on electrification in the industrial economies is really misplaced. And there's a large and growing body of academic research, academic people who are, documenting how impossible it is to simply fund industrial growth with batteries and solar panels and all of that. Just to look at electric cars, 10% of humanity owns a car. So you're calling an electric car an environmental solution, even at the price of all this degradation that happens for all the mining and whatnot? I mean, it's just unrealistic. But nobody really cares about the realism. What they really want is to feel better. So that's kind of what we didn't want. We didn't want a new form of feel better environmentalism. What we wanted, like you said, is scalability. Realistically, it's really hard to, you don't want to create one model that everybody everywhere is going to use, but to support ourselves in more self-sufficient, self-determined communities, I think is the political foundation of addressing the madness that's overtaking particularly the United States. Wealthy people don't want to pay taxes, and they're willing to kill a lot of people to not have to pay taxes. They do it in indirect ways, very Christian ways and all of that. But that's really the background for the right-wing stuff that's going on these days. And the alternative is self-determined communities.
What is a self-determined community for someone who might not know what that is?
It means that you have as much control as possible over where your food and other necessities come from, and you are networked with other communities doing the same thing. So you get to make real choices instead of being a house slave, as Malcolm X would put it. He talked about field slaves and house slaves. You know, the field slaves are the ones who feel the brunt of oppression, and the house slaves are the ones who like their situation, even though they're actually enslaved. And, you know, so we can tell Americans that you're free, but what Americans really are these days is pretty narcissistic, or people in middle-class industrial societies in general. But we're wholly dependent on the corporations for our food, for our energy, for everything. We've all become very comfortable house slaves. And breaking free of that is not easy, certainly, and you can't do it alone. And the anathema part of it, or the path you just can't talk about, is sustainability you cannot do in a suburban home. You cannot do in a private apartment. What we tell people when I do tours of LEF, Living Energy Farm, is, you know, it takes 10 people minimum. But to even get 10 people to work together in the United States without money or coercion is challenging. But that's the real challenge. You cannot build good thermal systems, good electric systems, renewable energy-based, good conservationist systems with less than 10 people.
Yeah, well, what's really interesting visiting Living Energy Farms, which is where we're at right now, is just how many systems you've been able to make with just simple solar panels, old school batteries, and just like everything works. It's completely off grid. There's not a single hookup into the system, but meanwhile you're able to run heavy machinery. The showers are warm. You know, we just had like a hot lunch and hot coffee. So basically the creature comforts that people expect or want in life. When we think of environmentalism in the United States, we think of like electric cars and solar subsidies and all these other like big projects, but really it seems simple. You mentioned it takes like these things work better when you have more people living within it.
Yeah, you need 10 people. And it's not just a question of work better, quote unquote. It's you know, the laws of physics don't care about our politics. They really don't. And, you know, so if you take an ordinary house or a badly built house, I mean, you mentioned, okay, we do have some batteries, we do have some solar panels, but if you add solar panels to an ordinary American lifestyle, to an ordinary American house, you're probably increasing your total footprint. You're certainly not decreasing it. And again, that's anathema to say that, but, you know, we consume massive amounts of energy. We've gotten accustomed to it. And it's kind of like, you know, it's an addiction among many. And, you know, so you got a friend of yours who's drinking too much. What do? Find them a new flavor of beer? I mean, it's really pretty obvious that we need to downscale, I would say 2 orders of magnitude. So we're looking at, you know, not 90%, but closer to 1% for it to really be sustainable over the long term. And I think for most people, that's unfathomable. And, you know, LEF has worked out well. And we're approaching that. I don't know if we're there exactly, but we're close. And, you know, we've kind of devised a whole new way of doing solar, and it's not based on solar panels and batteries. It's based primarily on, number one, community organization. So I'm not trying to do all this by myself. I'm not trying to manage a garden and renewable energy systems and a biogas system and all of this by myself. And then we try to do a really good job with the insulation. I mean, the buildings are straw-bale, so they're really thick walls, good insulation. The point is to bring your energy use way down, and then once you've got a much smaller energy use, try to do that with renewable energy. And then what we discovered, and it's been really cool, is the direct drive. The fact that we can run a whole lot of equipment straight from the PV panels to the equipment. You mentioned heavy machinery, heavy equipment. So I've got a machine shop. We've got farm tools, kitchen tools. It's all direct drive, which means so the PV panels are made by a big nasty corporation, but we've got like 300 watts per person, not 3,000 or 30,000 the way some people do. And we do the heavy work during the day. So there's the PV panels, not free to make, but much smaller scale than what most people have. And then it's a copper wire going to, mostly we use what are called permanent magnet motors. They're just copper wire and magnets. So you're talking about a system that my children and grandchildren can use, a lifetime energy supply that's about 80% cheaper to build than a battery-based kit. Debbie, my partner, calculated the numbers compared to like the Tesla Powerwall approach. We've got about 2% as much batteries because we're only use the batteries for lights at night, DC LEDs, really efficient. So we have a tiny little battery set. We like nickel iron batteries, but that's not the important part. The important part is the design that gets you there.
And you mentioned that a lot of the appliances that we use today are poorly designed. I mean, I think the fridge is the best example. You open up the fridge, cold air fall. So as soon as you open up the fridge, all the cold air is left. It's really cool how you've kind of used what we would traditionally call like a deep freezer, but you're using that as a fridge. And it seems like you've also been doing this work in Puerto Rico as well.
Yeah, we've got a number of projects overseas. And, so some things are easy to convert and other things are more difficult. Water pumps are super easy. There's DC, so we do everything DC, direct current. That's what comes out of photovoltaic panels. So there's no alternating AC like what's out on the grid. And the advantage of DC, it's tremendously flexible. The voltage can go all over the place, 500% change, and it's fine. And you can't do that with AC appliances. So yeah, like for a water pump or any kind of like either, just watering your lawn, or if you're a farm and you want to do big scale irrigation, those are super easy. Refrigerators are tougher. And I have to say, it's not just the air rushing out of a fridge when you open the door. The thing just sitting there uses a lot of energy just because they're badly designed. I've put meters on fridges and I've found them as high as $250 per year in electricity use, while the label says $40. They deteriorate quickly. It's just a really bad machine.
I feel like in mainstream American society, we're obsessed with this typical prototypical kitchen where you have the stainless steel fridge and the stainless steel appliances. And I feel like a lot of that just comes down to like people want to be able to resell their homes. And so they kind of stick locked in with like the status quo.
Yeah. The resale value of American homes has been pitted against the fate of the whole planet at this point. That's the reason all the environmental groups and the people who are willing to tell people that you can hold on to your big house and your big car and just put up enough solar panels and it'll all be fine. That message sells really well. Those people are rich and famous and leading organizations with $100 million, $200 million budgets. And we have our following, but it's a much harder message to try to tell people to change their whole lifestyle. So that's a big problem. But we're very adaptable creatures. We just have to be inspired to adapt in an intelligent way. Wealthy people can buy commercials on television. They can create social movements, and we send our children off to war if need be. But the level of change people are willing to engage when it hasn't been endorsed by the wealthy powers that be is a much harder challenge. I mean, what I tell people, is that we're going there whether we like it or not. 200 years from now, everybody's going to be living in self-sufficient communities, whether we like it or not. Laws of physics don't give a damn about any of this political silliness that we engage in. Doesn't care how much we lie to each other, lie to ourselves. I'm not Christian in the traditional sense of, the mainstream sense of course, the Christianity is becoming corrupted these days. But I do consider myself a very spiritual person. And I think, okay, there's a bigger world out there that we understand by some measure. There's this magical, mystical creation of the living earth. Is it only the product of 4 billion years of evolution, or is it some higher intelligence there? It's kind of the same thing to me, either way. But it's our obligation to protect it. And I think we could build a movement around that. I don't see any reason we can't. It's obvious to me. It's kind of a manifest religion right there looking at us. Heaven is right there. Our spirits and our ancestors live right there. I'm pointing to the forest, which you can't see from the camera. That's ultimately the foundation, not the resale value of your freaking house. So in 200 years, we're going back to that. And our goal now is to ramp it down. To try to land the airplanes that are crashing it, because there's a pretty big difference. I think if we crash bad, we're going to take out most of the megafauna that's left. And it's also a question, we're going to live in self-sufficient villages eventually, but are they going to be patriarchal, nasty, horrible places? Or are they going to be places that are better than that, where people mostly get along with each other? We can choose either one, but the laws of physics are not going to be denied. Call it God's will. That's what I've started thinking of. Yeah, that's the will of something bigger than us.
Well, it's funny because from the outside, like someone could be like, "Oh, that's prepping." But as a visitor here, someone who's been touring communities, like this is just a more enjoyable way to live. Like, you have your family here. There's other people here. Everyone comes together for lunch and dinner. People take turns cooking. The food's been delicious. Like it's off the land. The vibes and the energy here are so good. So it's not even about, in 200 years we're gonna have to do it, but if people can start doing it now, and to know that you can do it without having to spend a lot of money on energy. I think one of the scariest parts about leaving the system, if you will, is security is having like a typical home, and then having all this money to pay for the home, but it's so expensive just to pay for this thing. And then, you got to replace your fridge every 10 years. My parents are replacing a fridge now, and it's like in some part of the house that's not easily accessible. So they have to cut like a hole. And it's like, okay, now it's become, like, what is that for?
Yeah, I mean, what's all that worth? You twist your ankle and there's nobody to get you a bowl of soup. I mean, humans have always lived in villages and bands and social groups up until, it's really only been the last 100 years. Of course, it's changed, slowly, that we've been told that we should isolate ourselves if necessary for the sake of our jobs. And survival in a capitalist, small c or big C capitalist society is based on money, access to wealth. So people want to hold on to that. But your security is ultimately embedded in how many people care about you. And life is far more rewarding if you spend it in the time, in the company of people who care about you. So yeah, what's all that money going to buy you if nobody cares? So, and we are comfortable. I mean, I'm pleased that we have achieved the level of comfort that we have, because I built a lot of off-grid kits for friends of mine over the years, off-grid houses, because, I work in the trades, and all those systems get abandoned over the time, because the battery kits are too expensive. People don't want to replace them. So, we figured out the community scale, the insulation, and then we figured out the direct drive here. And so, yeah, I got a refrigerated lemonade. I don't drink beer, but the house is pretty cool in the summer, certainly warm in the winter. I don't have to work too hard, a little bit in the fall, certainly. Pretty comfortable. It's not social status. It's not what is ordained by the powers that be as, the way an American's supposed to live.
Yeah. And even on the heating front, you mentioned all this firewood behind us is enough for 3 years? Or
this particular stack, yeah, I'd say 3 years for 10 people.
Wow.
So we could live pretty comfortably with never striking a match. We do burn a little bit of firewood in late December, January to heat water, when the solar resources are low. A little bit to cook with, potentially. Although actually the last 2 years we haven't burned any for cooking. We're running i6 insulated solar electric cookers that was developed by Pete Schwartz out of Cal Poly, and we worked with him we make bigger ones, he's making cheaper ones to go around the world. Anyway, the combination of the i6 and now biogas, we don't burn wood to cook with anymore. So yeah, some homesteaders call it sustainable to have a big old wood lot and burn a pile of firewood, and oh my God, those outdoor boilers are the worst invention ever created by humanity, next to nuclear weapons perhaps. Yeah, so we do not burn gobs and gobs of firewood, and if everybody burned firewood the way modern homesteaders do, then we'd cut the whole forest down pretty quickly.
Yeah. Well, it's cool how dialed in you have it, every system. And I mean, we could probably go into detail, but I feel like it'd be best to steer listeners to some pre-existing stuff that goes into an in-depth tour.
Yeah, well, so the websites, livingenergyfarm.org and livingenergylights.com, there's a few little articles there about like how does a DC microgrid work and all of that. And there's a book, a fairly short book, Empowering Communities, that's linked off of there. And you can download that as a PDF. When I see people face to face, we have paper copies, but I don't want to mail paper copies all over the place. So if you're not here, just download the PDF. And yeah, that goes into, I revised it pretty significantly in the last year to try to just make it more of a technical manual. It was kind of more personal book historically, but now it's mostly just an overview of how all these systems work and how they fit together. So if you want to understand that, that's the best way to get to that.
What would you say are the core pillars sitting atop the community foundation of?
Well, the community foundation is the biggest part. That is the foundation of it. I mean, I can build a solar hot water system for one person or a couple for $5,000, and the same solar hot water system can support 10 people. So your cost per capita obviously plummets. Cooperative use is really the magic bullet that makes renewable energy work. Because for renewable energy to work, people want simple, good and evil, good and evil. Well, solar panels are not good. They're very expensive, very resource intensive. But if we use them in such a way that we need, 5% as much as people are using on these big grid tie racks where they tie into the grid and they've got 5 or 10 kW on the roof, okay, well, it's not free lunch, but it's much better. So cooperative use is really the magic bullet. It's true for thermal systems, it's true for electrical systems, it's true for biogas, all of those systems. they start to work not both mechanically but also financially. The payback. I mean, we can preach ideology all you want, but if there's no payback there, it doesn't work. If your shower costs $5,000, you're not going to do it. You're going to go out and get a $120 electric water heater. If your shower costs, a tenth that much, and then it works for a lifetime, and you don't have to pay an electric bill, wow, okay, that starts to work financially. So the numbers work at 10 people. Just ideology aside, just return on investment, payback, whatever the hell you want to call it, it works. So beyond that, yeah, we figured out the DC microgrid. That was great. And again, it's integrated across a whole community. It's not trying to support just one little appliance. The history of solar power is a lot about a low voltage power system that supports one use, and then they try to multiply that up, keeping it low voltage, keeping it tied, keeping it battery based. What we have is an integrated system. And it's pretty stunning because I learned, I did a lot of work on machinery out there in the big world. And, if you took everything we have at Living Energy Farm, at this point we have about 16 kilowatts worth of motors. So machine shop, seed grinders, seed blowers, seed cleaners, blenders, choppers for the kitchen, cookers where we cook most of our food on solar electricity, and insulated solar electric cookers. If you took all that to a big solar kit company, a supplier, and said, all right, I want to do all this, they'd probably be $200,000 or $300,000 worth of equipment to support that. We're doing it for 1,400 watts. In modern terms, you're talking about $300-400 worth of solar panels to supply 16 kilowatts worth of motors for 10 people for a lifetime. It is, like I say, we're talking 2 orders of magnitude cheaper. It's very different, and it works. I don't wash my clothes at night. Who cares? I adjust my lifestyle a little bit based on the weather. Who cares? If I'm going to cut, like this firewood is cut with a solar-driven saw. It's a big buck saw that used to run off of a farm tractor. It's as fast as a chainsaw, but I'm not going to do it on a cloudy day. It's a cloudy day today. I'm not going to do it today. I'll wait till tomorrow. It's going to be sunny. And then I'll run that big saw. But today I can go out in the machine shop. I was out in the machine shop all this morning running a drill press and a lathe. I'm fixing a piece of farm equipment. It's fine in the clouds. Our motors run in the clouds. People don't understand that. But with the high voltage direct drive, you get less power in the clouds, but we still cruise along. So we do adjust our lifestyle a bit based on the weather, but it's radically cheaper and more effective and more durable than traditional solar kits, and it works. So yeah, the pillars are cooperative design, good insulation, straw-bale, well-designed buildings that just don't dump energy everywhere. And then you stack on top of that the DC microgrid, the biogas, the sort of actual tools that kind of make it work.
And then you even have the biogasser, so it's like every piece of compost. Even I did my number 2 in a toilet this morning that I pumped into the and even when I turned on the gas to heat up some water, I noticed it was a different type of gas. Can you tell us a little bit more about the biogas?
So biogas is the same thing as methane, is the same thing as natural gas. It's a digestion process with archaea, which are microorganisms that existed on the planet Earth 4 billion years ago. They're one of the first. And they can consume any organic matter and emit methane. There's a lot of industrial scale biogas in the United States and in other industrial countries, sometimes tied to the big animal feedlot operations. I mean, those are evil, but you get all that waste, it does make biogas. The challenges, and they do smaller scale biogas in the tropics. So the challenges for biogas, the big one is just it needs to stay warm. So the tank, the digester itself, from 85 to 110 degrees is kind of the optimal window. You're doing pretty good down to 80. You start getting significantly below 80 degrees inside the tank, and it just doesn't work as well. You can get some gas, but a lot less. So in a cold climate or temperate climate, you've got to have a really well-insulated tank because you don't have this thing indoors. And then you got to keep it warm. So we have a solar flat plate, a system just like you'd use to heat hot water for taking showers or whatever, just pumping heat into this digester. And then from there, you feed it any kind of organic matter. You don't have to have animal manure. We do put some human waste into ours, but it's a lot of it's grass clippings. And this time of year, there's watermelon rinds and all this stuff coming off the farm.
Delicious watermelon.
Right. So the biogas is not time specific. I can cook breakfast at 6 a.m. or cook toast for the kids at 10 p.m. Whereas the insulated solar electric cookers, we do probably 70% of our cooking on the solar. And the high voltage cookers that we have, they'll cook in moderately cloudy weather, they'll cook in bitter cold weather, and you're in the kitchen cooking with your cooker, not running out in the yard to fuss with some solar cooker. So that kind of solar cooker is dramatically better than other solar cookers. and then the gaps, the heavily cloudy days, early, late, is all done with biogas. And the biogas, it took us a few years to sort that out, but the system we have now is working really well, and we're going to try to power the farm tractors with it. So our whole system now is fully energy independent, without big battery sets, without propane or natural gas or grid power, and we're still burning a little bit of gasoline in the tractors. It's 30, 40 gallons a year. It's not that much, to grow 4 acres of seeds. That's what we grow for money, open pollinated seeds, and most of our food. And we're going to try to do that with biogas. We worked with wood gas and turpentine, and now we're working with biogas. So biogas is a very flammable, very, very useful fuel that's pretty easy to make. And it's not so hard when you got 10 people, so you can kind of, again, the systems need to fit together.
Yeah. Well, it seems like you have it really dialed in now. I'm really curious about the origin story. So you grew up in South Georgia, Southern Georgia. Can you tell me what it was like growing up?
Well, I grew up in a county settled by the Salzburgers, just north of Savannah, Georgia. So there's actually a statue in Savannah for the Salzburgers, from Salzburg, Austria, which means salt city. So my last name is Ziegler, so that county was Ziegler, Zichauer, Zettler, Zipperer, right down the line, bunch of Salzburgers. Anyway, but it was very conservative, and my father was crazy, bitterly racist guy who was pretty bad to his children, basically. Pretty fundamentalist Christian. I felt like I was a Martian. I came from somewhere else. It's like, what are you people on this crazy? I mean, there's some good sides to it, certainly. I grew up on a farm. We had good food, too. And I had the freedom that country kids have to romp in the woods and do all that stuff. And I learned some skills. But for me, especially as I got older, I became quite isolated. It's a very conformist culture. And I didn't really have any particular support. So I kind of had to do it on my own, and that was difficult. By the time I got to be a teenager, it's like, okay, get me out of here. So I moved to Twin Oaks. I first came there when I was 18. And that served me well.
For those who are listening, Twin Oaks is the
largest secular income sharing community in the country. And it's unique in that it has a very strong social culture there. It's really easy to kind of get to know people. And Living Energy Farm has social connections with Twin Oaks. We are a lot more focused than they are, and a lot smaller. But certainly when I was 18, in my early 20s, Twin Oaks served me well. It was a good place for me to sort of reorient my life.
How did you find Twin Oaks?
This was pre-internet.
Yeah.
A classified ad in the back of a magazine, The Humanist magazine.
The Humanist magazine.
Which I'm pretty sure doesn't exist anymore. Just a classified ad, and I came and visited them. It was really strange because even though it was culturally kind of the opposite end of the planet, for me, it was also very similar. What I did on the farm was I'd get up and figure out what needed to be done and do it. I'd walk around the farm, fix the fences, and make sure the cows were okay, and take care of the gardens and the fields. My brothers and family worked with that too. That's what I did at Twin Oaks. I mean, I started doing a lot more mechanical stuff at Twin Oaks, but it was a get up, okay, what's broken today? What needs to pay attention to? So my work was pretty similar in a lot of ways, and I learned very quickly and, found people to talk to finally. So it was a real social transition was huge for me. But I had the environmental, I was raised Christian. And to me, the good side of Christianity is it gets you past your narcissism. American narcissism at this point is a disease. It's pretty terrible. Of course, the consumer society loves to feed that because the more narcissistic people are, the more crap you can sell to them. So the good side of Christianity is it teaches you not to be a narcissist, at least. And of course, these days, Christianity's been manipulated for all sorts of political measures. It always has, historically, as well. But for me, I sort of transposed that over onto the natural world. It's like, what do you mean, God up in the sky? And the tree there, that's God right there, obviously. It's not obvious. So I kind of developed my own, I never thought I was Jesus in any, delusional sort of way, but I had kind of my own messianic mission. That's what became important to me. And that kind of became my root, which is what got me through the madness.
When did you start having, these visions for a better world?
Oh, when I was a little kid, I knew I was different, and I knew it was my role to make the world a better place. When I was second, third grade, I knew that.
Would you say your rock bottom then was growing up, or
just before I left Georgia, 16, 17?
Can you walk us through what it felt like to be that 17-year-old?
It was really quite bad. It was unmistakably the worst part of my life for sure. Physically, I would keep moving, and that was good. But, I was going for weeks at a time without sleeping. And you read the psychology textbooks, people can't do that, but I did it. Weeks at a time, no sleep. because the environment around me was so hostile to my belief system, I knew that I couldn't just go to somebody and say, hey, I'm having a really hard time. They would just use it to destroy me, basically, ideologically. So that I had to hide everything. So that kind of hypersensitized me to feeling like I was under constant threat. It's part of the reason I couldn't sleep. So yeah, it was like being in a situation with nobody to talk to, nobody who would just listen to me or talk to me or whatever about my own personal, what was going on in my life. I mean, there's a few people in high school I connected with a little bit, but not much. And then feeling like the entire environment around me was trying to destroy me. And it was, in a sense. That's what conservative cultures do, is they destroy nonconformists. So a lot of people end up dead. Yeah, suicide was common. I mean, I guess that's a blessing of the internet. It is easier to reach out at this point. So when I was in Redneck, Georgia at 16, 17 years old, it's like I knew these other places existed, but it was kind of an abstraction. I had no idea that I could not in any way sense myself being with a different group of people in a different place. And I knew that. I'd ask myself, what do I need? Why is my life such a mess? I need connection with other people. I knew that. There's nothing I could do about it until I got old enough and finally it kind of got for me to the point where I said, I'm gonna be dead soon if I'm gonna get out of here. So I just left. And it was hard to leave even then, because I was very rooted to that land and very rooted to the place, in spite of the madness. But yeah, getting through that, reaching out, getting out of your bubble, out of your shell is really hard when you're young, because it's just so natural to be in that. And since then, I've did a lot of support work for people in transition, crazy people, mentally ill, whatever we want to talk about. And, all of our activist leaders are crazy to a greater degree. I mean, if you're comfortable and happy, you don't get out and risk your neck to change the world. So that's part of the deal. But yeah, eat, work, sleep, keep moving. That's what I tell people who are in the midst of it. It's like your spiritual path is going to take a while. You're not going to figure this all out in the next week. But in the meantime, eat, work, sleep, and stay connected. I mean, the people who make it are the ones who stay connected. The ones who
Stay connected to what?
Other people. I could go down the list. I could give you the names of a dozen suicides I know. And the suicides have all been, and some of them are kind of quasi-suicides, but the people who die are the ones who let themselves get isolated. You will not make it on your own. You will not. I mean, I was that close to not making it. And finally, when I got to Twin Oaks, it's just like real people. You just sit down and hang out.
Yeah.
And suddenly I became a human being. It's like, wow, what a difference. Even now, I walk around the city streets and I dress like a bum. Sometimes people try to hand me money. I'm like, it's okay. I just don't want to buy new clothing. And I'm not quite a human being in their eyes. I know that, because America is so class conscious, and you've got to dress nicely and look a certain way and have a certain education. I don't care about all that now. But when you're young, it's hard because you do care. Once you're older, you can kind of not give a shit. But when you're young, you inherently give a shit about what the people around you think. So you've got to find people who, were willing to listen to you, and you listen to them. When I first got to Twin Oaks, a friend of mine, and we're still good friends, because I was blathering on one day about how difficult the world was. And he looked at me and said, if you want friends, all you got to do is ask questions and listen to the answers. That's it. And that is it. Just go sit down somewhere, and if somebody's willing to sit down, just start asking them questions. I mean, I'm sure they're not up to something else, but ask questions, listen to the answers. It goes from there, and you got to stay connected. So eat, sleep, work, stay connected. That's what you got to do. Push through it, and it takes time.
Changing things up seems to be a common theme on this podcast of getting out of a rock bottom situation. And now you're at Twin Oaks, and you start contributing. Were there ever periods beyond that were tough, or did you feel like just kind of landing in the right group and then the rest was just kind of upward? Or
upward, but on a long, slow, hard curve. I mean, naturally, this is an interview. We're not going to spend hours talking about my life, but I mean, one measure for me, and I don't believe in labels. If I wanted to be PTSD or whatever, but I don't really believe in all of that. But I do watch my dreams. And for the first 5 years at Twin Oaks, I never had a dream about Twin Oaks or about anybody at Twin Oaks. 5 years. It was all trying to process just what I'd been through as a kid. And a lot of it was a bloodbath. It was kind of just constantly under attack in my dreams. And after 5 years, it started to shift a bit. It took about 35 years for me to have present time dreams. I'm 50, how old am I? 58, 59, I lose track. Somewhere, late 50s. And it's really only been in the last few years that I start dreaming about, so Debbie's my partner, we have 2 kids, we have a wonderful family. Like last night, I just had a dream, like me and my daughter Rosa, we're in Charlottesville, we're in a town, and I'm trying to figure out whether or not I'm building some house somewhere, and she's kind of wandering through this, is that okay? I think she's old enough maybe, but like a present time dream based on, that's only been in the last few years.
How do you get through like blocks today? Do you ever find yourself in, frustrated moments or?
Oh golly, who's not frustrated while the United States is sinking into an authoritarian denialist culture? I mean, it's a little better for me because I studied the late Roman Empire, and this is exactly what empires do. I maintain some connections with people. I'm very focused on my projects. I feel like I'm having more of an impact on the world than I ever have. That's kind of the balance for me.
A lot of young people are feeling very stuck today. What can people do who feel that way and who might be inspired by these people living in communities and living off the grid? Where can they start?
Well, IC.org is a good, intentional communities is what IC stands for. IC.org is a good site. Of course, we have our website. We're a very small facility though. I want to say, I've heard that stuck thing. So, I'm not as young as I used to be. The number of people I've had come to me and they're 50, 60, 70 years old. I'm like, yeah, I've wanted to live in community all my life and I just never could make it work. It's like, what? How stuck are you? And what is it that has you stuck? It was, at the ripe old age of 18, it was not easy for me to break free and go do, I kind of had to get to the point where I was going to end up dead if I didn't. So I know it's not easy, but don't wait until you're 50 to do what you want to do when you're 20. For God's sake, it's your life, Find the people, find the place, find the thing, and what you got to lose? You're going to spend your life living in the matrix and look back and say, oh shit, that was a mistake? A lot of people who say that. I've met a lot of older people who spend their whole life, and they're just scared of being poor. They're scared of not having money and not having their own private car and their own private house. It's like, give it up. Dude, your planet's burning down. Your whole political democracy is coming down around your head. We've got real live Nazis trumping around pretending to be patriots, and you're worried about, no. You need to move through this, okay,
and the funny thing is like having the home and having the car is just further isolation from people, which is I think further. So it's like the things that we're trying to protect that we see as security are just so far from actual
security.
Yeah.
Actual security is how many people care about you. That's what matters at the end of the day. If you have a bunch of people who care about you, then if you have financial difficulties, you have some place to go to, somebody to turn to. If you get sick, you have somebody to turn to. If you do not have people who care about you, you got a problem. You need to fix it. So that's what you need, build the relationships. And of course you need to build relationships with people who can relate to you, whatever the core of who you are is. And that's different, of course, for all of us. And damn it, we need to save the planet. We are currently trapped by an imperial culture that wants to destroy the planet for short-term profit, obviously. And, there is a better way, and it's not a bunch of windmills and solar panels on a mountaintop. It's not just voting for the right person and demonizing the wrong person. Our society is going to go through some fundamental economic shifts, and we just need to do it on purpose. That's all. Imagine the idealist, the perfect village, 100 years from now. They're all working together. It's simpler, but, they have some technology, but, not automobiles and airplanes. And just do it on purpose. Just do it now. Nothing's stopping us but our own fear, our own inhibition, our own oh, I can't do that. Nobody on television told me to do that. Nobody on TikTok, whatever, Facebook told me to do that. It's like, no, you got to do it. Protest, great, fine. But it's not about good guys and bad guys at this point. The system we have, the economic system, is creating the political madness that we have because of the concentration of wealth. There's a class of people who fund crazy, messed up media that lies to people all day long. And then those people believe what they heard, and they're creating a lot of political madness. It's kind of predictable in a sad sort of way. But the antidote to that, sure, vote for the right person. Great. Vote as much as you can legally vote. That's great. And that is
it's such a small part of the actual change. Yeah.
It is a tiny, tiny, tiny piece. And, we like to be frustrated at demons. I am so frustrated, though, at the point who just all of the media now is focused on their chosen demon. Like this person and that person who's a bad guy. It's like, okay, there's a lot of bad guys, but that's not really the problem here. The problem here is that those bad guys are the ones who own corporations, who feed you, who provide your energy. And that's what self-determination comes back to. It all goes, and this is not just me pulling this out of the air. I mean, people who study anthropology and history have been saying this for centuries. Carl Wittfogel, back over 100 years ago, Hydraulic Societies, he talked about how the irrigation-based, dynasties from out to several thousand years ago, the concentration of economic power made for a concentration of political power. Yeah. And now people are so misunderstanding. Like, solar panels could have been a good thing. Instead, we put them out in fields, instead of like bringing them home and developing a lifestyle where we live with the energy instead of like trying to, maintain our connection to those big systems.
Yeah.
Even recycling, God, I was so opposed to plastic recycling. Back when recycling was beginning to come curbside in the 1990s, everybody was who had a brain, because plastic's not recyclable. So they mixed in plastic, which is not a recyclable material and takes up a huge amount of space. So now we have this big bulky recycling program and it all gets burned. It's the same thing happened with solar panels. We took something good, not perfect, but good, and we made it bad to appease middle class people and to appease corporations and to appease the big environmental groups who don't want to sell hard messages. And now you've got plastic in every cell in your body.
Yeah.
Because of appeasement. Planet appeasement. You choose. Planet resale value.
Yeah. It's funny what you're saying, because I feel like what you're saying is so compatible with both like left-wing and right-wing people. It's basically, how do you become self-sufficient? And when I talk to right-wing people, friends and family, like, there's just so much frustration with a lot of these environmental programs. And to your point, like a lot of them, yeah, like making a field of solar panels doesn't really, it's just like a drop, like it doesn't really do much.
I mean, it's not that it doesn't do much. It's making things worse, really. I mean, it's just not an answer. I mean, drill, baby, drill.
Yeah.
There's this illusion that we can keep growth going with enough energy. The electrification program is the same thing. It's just solar electricity versus oil, and they're both black and white thinking. Like, there's this good thing, and we just need to do more of it. Instead of like, okay, let's develop this broader long-term perspective of how do we live on this earth in a sustainable manner. I mean, we can send people to the moon. We can build interstates. We build airplanes. We build all this big stuff. Sustainability is way easier than what we are currently doing. Way easier. It's just not rich people telling us to do it.
Yeah. Is there anything you would like to add or say?
Well, the website's livingenergyfarm.org, livingenergylights.com. Self-empowered, self-determined communities are the foundation of the solution to everything we need to do at this point. It's not government funding for renewable energy. It's not just good guys and bad guys. No matter how bad the bad guys may seem, they are just acting out the will of a concentrated economic system. And the deconcentration of that economic system is up to us to build self-determined communities. And it's way easier than what we're currently doing. Way easier. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for being here.